Hello there. Thanks for stopping by. It's kind of lonely around here. I don't get many visitors these days. I grew up just around the corner there. We had a small farm, my mom, Paula, and us kids. There were 6 of us. I was number 2 after my older brother. He and I would like to spend our summer days building a log cabin down by the creek. Well, we spent more time planning it, never really got around to building it. My pa was a hard-working man. He expected none less from us kids. He worked from sun up to sundown just to keep us fed and in shoes. Now, pa expected us to carry our own weight. We had chickens and cows. I hated having to gather eggs as a youngin'. There was this mean old rooster like to chase us around the yard. And you don't know fear till you've been chased by a berserker rooster. But man, those chicken and dumplings were tasty. And our mule, the stories I could tell you about that mule. There was one time, my sister was leaning over to muck out the stall. Well, that mule was prone to biting. Let's just say my sister didn't sit comfortably for a week or so. I was in my last year of schooling when they hit Pearl Harbor. All those boys lined up at the recruitment office. I wasn't going to sit idly by while all my buddies were joining up. Now, after some arguing, my pa agreed to let me stop my studies as long as I agreed to pick him up once the war was done. I joined the Army Air Corps with my older brother. We were determined to avenge our countrymen that lost their lives. They really did wake the sleeping giants. They gave me a plane. Can you believe it? I ain't never flown a plane before. I never operated anything larger than the tractors on a farm. It was scary at first, all those dials and buttons. But I'm a quick study, and I learned pretty fast. We trained, and we trained, and we trained. And we waited. And then we got our orders. My older brother got shipped off first. He found his way to the Pacific. I'll never forget that last hug I gave him. It felt like an eternity, and yet not long enough. We agreed we'd finally build that log cabin as soon as we made it back home. Me and my crew were headed to Europe. I never thought a country boy like me would end up there. We kept our eyes to the skies, watching for the enemy. We stayed busy during the day training, staying on alert. But it was the nights that were the toughest. Sharing sleeping quarters with a dozen other men, all the snoring. You'd have thought you were sleeping in a sawmill. We got sent on missions on a regular basis. I kept my girl's picture in the plane with me. She was my motivation to make it back home. Each time we came back from a mission, we would scan the skies where other planes were turning. There was always at least one that didn't. I didn't know them all, but I felt their loss just the same. That last mission, I remember that night well. I was just finishing up a letter from home from my mom when we got our orders. We were headed to Germany. I gathered my crew and reviewed the flight path. My bomber studied the pictures to make sure he knew exactly what we were aiming for. Exactly what to do. It was just another routine bombing mission. I gave my girl's picture a kiss and fired up the plane. We were the 3rd bomber to take off from our squadron. I remember the moon that night. It was just a sliver. We flew into enemy fire. There were planes everywhere. I remember the plane on my left got hit, and the plane on my right. But we stayed the course, determined to hit our target. I can't tell you the exact moment I knew we were going down, but I do remember the sound of metal being ripped apart. That's a sound you never forget. I yelled to my radio, "We've been hit!" But there was silence. I remember looking back and seeing the gaping hole where my bomber used to sit. Then we went down, falling out of the sky. They brought me back home in a wooden box with a flag draped over it. My mom cried and cried. Pa even stood by with a tear in his eye. I ain't never seen my dad cry before. So now I lay here, under this stone and dirt. People come by from time to time to put a flag on my grave. I appreciate that they take the time to remember. Well, I guess y'all must be moving along. Thanks for letting me bend your ears a bit. Come back and visit anytime.